For those who are so unfortunate that you don't know His Holiness Giriraja Swami, we'll introduce him briefly. He joined Krishna consciousness very early, at a very tender age. I think you were 19, is that correct?
20.
Okay, 20, big difference. You were an adult. And he actually joined in Boston. He were going to Brandeis University, studying film and psychology. Did I get that right?
Psychology, yes.
And well, many things happened, but as everybody probably knows, he became very instrumental and dear to Srila Prabhupada by tolerating and managing the Juhu project, where he got his work cut out for him by having to deal with a demon of the stature of Hiranyakashipu, or his brother. And although Prabhupada was discouraged even by his own disciples to give up the project, that it was a rat-infested, in the middle of nowhere, intranscendent place, Prabhupada had the vision, and Giriraja Swami, then Giriraja Das Brahmachari, was follow Srila Prabhupada's advice and never gave up, not for a moment, and lived in terrible, very austere conditions. And eventually, a temple was built that was very dear to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaja is an author. He has written quite a number of books, and this is his latest. I'm going to put it on the screen here. I'll build you a temple. It's a beautiful, beautiful, incredibly meticulous account of what took place in Juhu in those times. Also, before arriving in India, I believe you did a little Harinam on the tarmac in Cairo, Egypt. Is that correct?
Yes.
So this was very unusual. The World Sankirtan Party, the first members of it. And of course, Maharaj has been preaching in many countries, particularly India, where he actually became friendly with some of the most influential, important, wealthiest people in India, high class recruiting, one can say. And eventually he went to Spain and South Africa, and he has quite a number of disciples. We have had the fortune of sharing part of his life in Santa Barbara, California. He has his ashram in Carpinteria, which is only 20 minutes away from where we used to live. So we have done many programs in conjunction. And today is a very auspicious day, the appearance of Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura Mahasaya. And Maharaj agreed to speak to us about him. And I must say that I was allowed to blow what is believed to be Narottama Dasa Thakura's own conchshell, that from the time of the Keturi Gram Didi installation ceremony, who I think you got it as a gift from Indradyumna Swami from somewhere in Bangladesh.
Yes, I'll blow the conch shell and I'll tell the story behind it.
Excellent. So without further ado, take it away. His Holiness Giriraja Swami.
My dear devotees on Zoom, I request you as far as possible to put on your cameras so we can see your moonlight faces, and it will be more personal. I will begin by singing the Mangalacharana prayers and leading a short kirtan, and then we will speak about Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura and blow his conch shell. Not necessarily in that order. Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Gurudeva, Srila Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Gurudeva, Srila Gurudeva. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paripurajaka Stotra Sutasi Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paripurajaka Stotra Sutasi Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Samveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna,
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna,
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna,
All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Prabhu.
Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Before Maharaj starts, please mute yourselves, everybody. Thank you so much. We're good to go.
So, thank you for inviting me to join you on this most auspicious occasion. And my thanks to all of you as well for joining. Narottama Dasa Thakura is a great Acharya, spiritual teacher in our Gaudiya Vaishnava spiritual heritage. One of the great Acharyas of our Sampradaya, particularly after the time of the Goswamis. The Goswamis were direct disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and there are 6 who are famous, but there are others who were also present during that time, such as Bhugarbha Goswami and Lokanath Goswami. Then after them was another generation of acharyas who continued the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And particularly three are prominent: Srinivasacharya, Shamananda Pandit, and Narottama Dasa Thakura. For our line of spiritual preceptors, which goes through Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan, Jagannath Das Babaji, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada. Narottama Dasa Thakura is especially prominent because he is the Parampara Guru of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. As described in Bhakti Ratnakar, during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, at one point when Mahaprabhu was in Keturi, which is now in Bangladesh, he started to chant the name Narottam, Narottam. Nara Uttama means topmost man. Just like we have the name Narasingha, man-lion. So Nara Uttama is a topmost human being. And the Vaishnavas asked Mahaprabhu, who is this Narottam? Who is this Narottam that you are glorifying, whose name you are chanting? Mahaprabhu replied that in this place, in the future, a great Acharya would appear and would continue the Sankirtan mission for all of us. At that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his bath in the river, the Padma River, which is right next to Keturi, and he invested his spiritual potency with Padma Devi, the personified deity of the river, and she, who appeared before him, and he gave her charge of his prema. At least it's described like that. And he instructed her to keep it for him until that time when Narottam would come and take his bath in the river. And at that time, she should give that prema to him. And so it came to be, as Mahaprabhu had said, that many years later, within a Kayastha family in Keturi, Kayasthas are not royalty, but they are aristocracy. A high-class Vaishya community like kings. So a child, Narottam, was born with all the symptoms of a Mahapurusha, liberated soul. There are symptoms, features of bodily physiognomy. One can read the personality of a person by their physiognomy. So this person had all the physical symptoms of a greatly elevated soul, and the Jyotish, the astrologer, came to read the chart and said that this was a very great personality. He would be a very great man, and he would be honored and respected by all for his great learning. But great care should be taken because there were indications of madness. You should be very careful, the Jyotish said, that he does not go near water, rivers, streams, ponds. Keep him away from such environments. Otherwise, he could become mad. And so it was that the child's parents were very careful to raise him and keep him away from any bodies of water. And they were successful for quite some years, until one day he had a dream that an effulgent Brahmin, if not Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, appeared before him and told him to go immediately and take his bath in the Padma River. So in the middle of the night, Narottam got out of bed, ran down to the river, and dove into the water. Padma Devi appeared and gave him the prema that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had left with her for him. And he became completely transformed. He became filled with transcendental ecstasy. He started to cry. His hair was standing on end. He was trembling, shaking, and shivering and calling out, Krishna, Krishna, calling out the name of Krishna, calling out the name of Gauranga again and again and again. Then he returned to the bank of the river and fell unconscious. He was going between consciousness and unconsciousness, exhibiting all the symptoms in the middle of the night and calling out Krishna, Krishna. So the people ran, they heard some commotion, and they ran and found it was the son of the king. He had gone mad. His parents came. All these years we were endeavoring to keep him away from the river, they said, but we have now become unsuccessful. Just see, the prince has gone mad. So they kept him inside the palace. They were trying to cure him. They brought a very qualified physician, a Kaviraj. He felt his pulse to diagnose the madness, the disease that was there. And his parents asked him, will you be able to cure him? Will you be able to save him? And he apologized. I am very sorry, but there is no cure for prema, for love of God. I cannot help you. And so Narottam's parents became very worried. Narottam was just crying for Krishna. He wanted to see Krishna, to meet Krishna, to be with Krishna, to serve Krishna. He was filled with love for Krishna and for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then Nityananda Prabhu appeared to him in a dream and instructed him to go. And so, again, in the middle of the night, he got up, walked out of the house, and started walking toward Vrindavan. Along the way, he had another vision of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, instructing him to learn from Jiva Goswami, who was in Vrindavan writing his transcendental literature. I'm just summarizing things here. So Narottam went to Vrindavan. He took shelter of Srila Jiva Goswami, who started to teach him the science of devotional service, particularly the Bhagavatam. The science of bhakti is taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by Srila Sanatana Goswami, by Srila Rupa Goswami. Jiva Goswami is famous in Gaudiya Vaishnava history. He is famous as the most systematic philosopher of the followers of Chaitanya. His Satsandarbhas are still studied today in the Benares Hindu University, where there is an entire division, a faculty devoted to their study. And Srila Jiva Goswami is renowned as one of India's greatest philosophers. There were two other students, comrades, with whom Narottama was studying, Shyamananda and Srinivas. And there are wonderful stories about the other two as well, but today we are focusing on describing the glories of Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura. After some time in Vrindavan, Narottama became very attracted to the personality of Srila Lokanath Goswami, who is sometimes called the seventh Goswami. When Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was writing Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he went to the six Goswamis individually and asked, "Please give me your blessings. I'm going to compile Chaitanya Charitamrita, the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Please give me your blessings." And individually, they all gave their blessings. Sri Sharada Madan Mohan also gave their blessings with the falling of their flower garland. And he went to Lokanath Goswami, who was one of the first of the Goswamis to arrive in Vrindavan on the order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He and Bhugarbha Goswami arrived first. He and Bhugarbha arrived first before Rupa and Sanatan and Raghunath Das and Gopal Bhatta. Sent by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was still a Grihastha in his Navadvip Leela. They were actually from East Bengal, Bangladesh. Finally, after giving up their responsibilities in East Bengal, they came to Navadvip and said to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "Now we are surrendered to you. We just want to stay with you and serve you here in your Sankirtan mission." But he told them, "I want you to go to Vrindavan." So very reluctantly, they dragged themselves away from him and settled in Vrindavan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had two missions, many missions, internal and external. But of his external missions to preach the chanting of the holy name, and then in Vrindavan to rediscover the pastime places of the Lord in his manifest pastimes 5,000 years ago, were two. So Narottama was entrusted to the Goswamis, beginning with Bhugarbha and Lokanath Goswami. Narottama became very attracted to and inspired by Lokanath Goswami. When Kaviraj Goswami asked Lokanath, "Please bless me to write Chaitanya Charitamrita," Lokanath Goswami said, "Yes, you have my blessings, but you must not mention my name in the book." And so Kaviraj Goswami was bound by that instruction that he could not mention Lokanath Goswami's name, and thus it does not appear, although he was a contemporary of the other Goswamis. So Narottama approached Lokanath Goswami and requested, "Please, will you accept me as your disciple? Will you give me Diksha?" But Lokanath Goswami refused. "No, I'm not accepting any Diksha disciples. Please do not entertain this thought any longer. it is not possible. Narottam was heartbroken. He approached him again and again and again, and repeatedly Lokanath Goswami refused him. He tried to render different services to Lokanath, but Lokanath always refused those services as well. Finally, he took it upon himself to clean the area of the forest where every morning Lokanath Goswami would answer nature's call. He would keep water there, and in this way he was rendering very, very humble and intimate service to Lokanath Goswami. And this went on for a whole year. Lokanath did not know who was doing it. One day, Lokanath, who by then was very old, decided to hide himself in the forest to see who it was that was doing this, which from his perspective was a humiliating service. And when Narottam came out and started to clean the area and make different arrangements, Lokanath called out, "Who is there?" "It is I, Narottama Das, your servant." "Why are you doing this? Don't do this anymore." And then Narottam fell at Lokanath's feet and said, "Please accept me as your disciple." Lokanath Goswami was also requested by Jiva Goswami to accept Narottam. And he had also received other indications that he should make one exception to his rule of not to accept any disciples and to accept Narottama Das. And so it was that he gave initiation to Narottama Dasa Thakura. Thus, in Narottam's song Guru Vandana, which we sing daily, Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma. At the end, we have Lokanath Lokera Jivana. May the glories of my spiritual master be spread all over the world. Lokanath means Lord of the world, and so he glorifies his spiritual master, and then indirectly glorifies his spiritual master, Lokanath Lokera Jivana. After some time, the Vaishnavas of Bengal, headed by Janava Mata, the wife of Nityananda Prabhu, requested Jiva that please, you are there in Vrindavan. By this time, Rupa, Sanatan, Raghunath Das, Raghunath Bhatta, and Gopal Bhatta had left. Jiva was younger. He was the nephew of Rupa and Sanatan, and so he was the head of the Vaishnavas in Vrindavan. So Janava Mata requested, you have all these wonderful literatures written by the Goswamis. In Bengal, we are deprived of this nectar. So please, will you make arrangements so that we can have this nectar in Bengal? And so Jiva had all the books transcribed and then told his three prominent students, Narottam, Srinivas, and Shamananda, go to Bengal and spread the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Spread the teachings of the Goswamis everywhere. He graduated them as his students and gave them each different titles. Srinivas became Srinivasacharya. Shamananda became Shamananda Pandit. And Narottam became Narottama Dasa Thakura. They were given their degrees and sent out preaching with the books. So the three traveled from Vrindavan to Bengal by bullock cart. Along the way, different adventures took place, including all the books being stolen by a king who was also a dacoit, a thief. It was a great calamity that all of the books were stolen. What to do? They were retrieved after much endeavor, and the king was made into a Vaishnava by Srinivasacharya, who stayed in that kingdom and initiated thousands of disciples, establishing Gaudiya Vaishnavism there. Shamananda Pandit went on to Orissa, where he established Vaishnavism far and wide and established many temples. His headquarters were in Gopi Janavallabhpur. He also initiated kings. And Narottam returned to Kaituri, where his cousin had become the king and inherited his family's wealth. Narottam sat under a tree outside the village, and when the people came and saw him, they exclaimed, "Narottam is back." The news spread that Narottam had returned and had become a great acharya and devotee. Thousands of people flocked there for his blessings. His nephew also came and laid his fortune at Narottam's feet. Of course, Narottam did not accept, but he did have his cousin build a beautiful temple in Kaituri and use his wealth to organize the first Gaur Purnima festival. Invitations to the festival were sent all over India. Wherever there were Gaudiya Vaishnavas, messages were sent with invitations. And so for Gaur Purnima, there was a huge camp set up with accommodations and prasad for thousands of Vaishnavas. All the present acharyas and mahants of the time were there. And for days, there were discussions of Krishna Katha and Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy and Siddhanta. Because all the Gaudiya Vaishnavas were so spread out in different places and quite isolated from one another, there were different understandings. But through this meeting and Ishtagosti and discussion, together they were able to discuss and understand things in a common way, according to the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Goswamis. Janavama presided over the assembly as the honored chairperson. During the day, they would discuss, and then in the evenings, they would have wonderful kirtans. Narottama Dasa Thakura, of course, many of the bhajans we sing today are his compositions. He had a very, very beautiful singing voice and was a very expert musician. He developed his own kirtans called Garanhati. And our own kirtan style is taken from the Garanhati style of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not exactly the same, but derived from it. There are other kirtan styles that are more ornamental and extensive in their articulation of the syllables, more meditational. But this is faster moving and shorter, more suited to the common masses of people to chant and hear and take the Maha Mantra and the different songs. So all of these great personalities were in these wonderful kirtans. Narottam led the kirtans and his followers played the instruments. And in the middle of one of these kirtans, many exalted devotees, not all, but many, saw the Panchatattva appear dancing in ecstasy. Hundreds of devotees saw this with their own eyes, and so an indescribable ecstasy flooded everyone's hearts. The Panchatattva appeared in that kirtan and were dancing in great ecstasy and reciprocating the loving affection of the Vaishnavas. Narottama Dasa Thakura initiated thousands of disciples, including many caste Brahmins. This evoked the anger of the caste Brahmins because Narottama was a Kayasta, a Vaishya. How could a Vaishya initiate Brahmins and be their guru? This was their caste consciousness. Obviously, Narottama didn't think much of this Brahmin by birth philosophy, and neither did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In any case, the caste Brahmin communities wanted Narottama punished for this offense, going against Dharma, according to them, going against Vedic injunctions. And they went to the king and told him, "You are the king. You are the protector of Dharma. You have to punish this heretic for his misbehavior. He has gone against Vedic injunctions, and you have to uphold the Vedic injunctions and punish him." The king replied, "Well, how can I be sure that what you are saying is true? I'm sure he has his explanations as well. Let us take all the leading pundits of the region and debate with him. And if he loses the debate, then we should punish him." And so it was that the king set out with an army, not of soldiers, well, not only of soldiers, but also of pundits, towards the place of Narottama Dasa Thakura. While they were on the way, however, some of Narottama's leading disciples got wind of what was taking place, and they didn't want their guru to be disturbed by this unnecessary debate. They were regularly debating with these caste Brahmins, and they had had enough of it. They didn't want Narottama to be disturbed by the arrogance of the king and the army and all that. It's a funny story. Two of Narottama's leading disciples set up a shop along the way, selling commodities that a traveling party would need: leaf cups and plates, clay pots, things that they could use for eating. Some of the king's people came into the village, and the shop was there at the entrance. "Oh, there are plates, there are cups," they said. And they went over and asked, "What is the price?" The shopkeepers responded in very high Sanskrit. And so these Brahmins were impressed. "Oh, how do you know Sanskrit?" "What do you mean?" the shopkeepers asked. "Everyone here speaks Sanskrit." The caste Brahmins heard the perfect compositions of sentences and pronunciation of Sanskrit words better than their own. And then and there, the shopkeepers started to debate with them, first about Sanskrit, and then about logic. And the pundits were feeling very uneasy that these shopkeepers are so learned and eloquent. We shouldn't be embarrassed by them defeating us, they considered. And so they left and reported to the king that it appeared that there were very, very learned people in that area. Even the shopkeepers were such great pundits. Imagine how the pundits themselves must be. And so they decided not to humiliate themselves and avoided the encounter with Narottama and his disciples. There was one great Pandit among the caste Brahmins who were causing trouble, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti. He went and debated with Narottam, and Narottam defeated him, and he surrendered and became Narottama Dasa Thakura's leading disciple. There was another personality, Ramachandra Kaviraj, who was a disciple of Narottam's godbrother or associate, Srinivasacharya, and Narottam was very, very attached to his association. They were so intimate that they would eat from the same plate. They were constantly together. In one song, Narottam wrote, Ramachandra Sangha Mage Narottama Das. Narottam Das always desires the company of Ramachandra Kaviraj. These two personalities, Ganga Narayan and Ramachandra, were very intimate. Ganga Narayan was a disciple, and he went in one direction to the northeast, to Manipur, and spread Krishna consciousness all over Manipur. Even to this day, in every town and village of Manipur, there are Gaudiya Vaishnava temples with Radha Krishna deities, Gaur-Nitai deities, Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. Everyone wears Gaudiya Vaishnava tilak, even though they may not know what it is. This is all due to the preaching of Narottama Dasa Thakura's disciple, Ganga Narayan Chakravarti, and with him was Ramachandra Kaviraj. At one point, Srinivasacharya decided that he would go from Vishnupur, where he recovered those books, to Vrindavan to see his guru, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and he wanted his disciple Ramachandra Kaviraj to go with him. And so he sent a note to Narottam. I'm going on pilgrimage, and I want my disciple Ramachandra to come with me. Narottam was heartbroken that his intimate companion, friend, and associate was going. But Ramachandra had to go. It was the order of his guru. And after Ramachandra left, Narottam became internally absorbed. When they were in Vrindavan, Srinivasacharya left his body, entered into samadhi. And almost immediately thereafter, Ramachandra Kaviraj also entered into samadhi. When the news came back to Narottam's disciples in Keturi, they were in a great dilemma. They had to inform Narottam that Ramachandra had entered into samadhi. But at the same time, they knew that if they informed him, he would also enter into samadhi. So it was very difficult for them, but they had an obligation. Their guru would want to know, and he would be angry if they didn't inform him. So they informed him, and predictably, he felt completely lost in the absence of his dear friend and associate. He entered into samadhi, and so, full of woe, his disciples started to prepare the funeral pyre. It is interesting that they wanted to cremate his body because usually a spiritual master was placed in samadhi. But sometimes they did it because they were afraid that Muslims would come and desecrate the remains. Anyway, they were placing his body onto the funeral pyre, and some caste Brahmins came and started saying, just see this Narottam. He made such an offense by initiating Brahmins, and now the Lord has punished him justly by killing him. They were speaking in this way, and his disciples were so hurt hearing this harsh criticism of their guru Ganga Narayan Chakravarti and the other disciples started to pray. Dear Narottama Dasa Thakura, this person is criticizing. Surely they are paving their way to hell. Will you not give them your mercy? Will you not deliver them? It was a very elevated prayer, rather than thinking, will you not kill them or punish them? And so Narottam came back to life, sat up on the funeral pyre, got down, and initiated those Brahmins. They paid their obeisances to him and completely surrendered to him, and he initiated them. But still, he was bereaving the loss, the departure of Ramachandra Kaviraj. And so sometime later, he was taking bath in the Padma River with his disciples and instructed them, I want you to pour water over me and don't stop. And so they poured water over him, and he started to melt, to turn into milk, actually. And as they were pouring water, he was dissolving. And so it was impossible for them. Here we are the ones who are causing our guru to disappear. But at the same time, we have been ordered not to stop. And so, with tears in their eyes, they continued to pour the sacred water over him, and their guru was dissolving, turning into milk. Someone took a lota of that milk. And so if you go to Ketari to this day, you can see the temple with Narottam's deities who were installed during the Gaur Purnima festival. And you can also see the Dud Samadhi of Narottama Dasa Thakura, where that milk was placed into Samadhi and a memorial was constructed. Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura ki jai. So now, to come to the story of the conchshell, there were 6 pairs of deities installed at the first Gaur Purnima festival in Ketari. And one of the pairs was Radha Vrajamohan. And Radha Vrajamohan went to Vrindavan, where they were being served by one of Narottama Dasa Thakura's disciples. And that temple, up until a few years ago, was not known to ISKCON devotees and was very poor. So Narottama Dasa Thakura's appearance day is a little bit before Gaur Purnima, and it was the tradition that His Holiness Indradumya Swami would come and stay with me just after the actual Gaur Purnima, and then he and I would go together to Laguna Beach for the regional Maha Gaur Purnima festival. And I had the well, I didn't actually have a picture as such, but I had the book Prarthana with Narottama Dasa Thakura's picture on the cover, and I had it out. I'd set it up for his appearance day, and I kept it out. So when Indradumya Swami came, he told me that he had discovered this temple of Radha Brajamohan in Vrindavan, and it was very poor, they could hardly afford boga to offer to the deities. They couldn't afford to make new outfits for the deities, and they really needed money. And Indradumya Swami asked me if I would contribute. And I said yes. And I gave quite a good amount, which they put into a fixed deposit. And from the interest of the fixed deposit, they were able to buy boga and flowers to offer to the deities, and even to make new outfits for the deities. So the pujari of the Vrajamohan temple was very grateful to Indradumya Swami and his devotees. He would come with his devotees and they would give donations. And out of gratitude and appreciation, he gave Indradumya Swami this conch shell, which was among the paraphernalia that Narottama Dasa Thakura sent to Vrindavan, to his disciple, for the worship of Radha Vrajamohan. And as Indradumya Swami says, we don't know. It might have been blown by Narottama Dasa Thakura, or by Srinivasacharya, or by Janava Mata. It's possible. We don't know for sure, but we do know that it was sent by Narottama Dasa Thakura with the paraphernalia for the worship of Radha Vrajamohan in Vrindavan. And one feature of this conch shell is that it has two pitches. It has a high pitch and a low pitch. So I will now blow it and we'll see what comes out. That was the low pitch. That was the high pitch. So it's a very special conch, and I feel very blessed and fortunate to have received that mercy in consideration of my humble contribution. So again, thank you all for joining. Thank you for inviting me on this auspicious occasion, and thank you all for joining. And now, if there's time, we can take questions or comments. I guess if anyone wants to say something, you can raise your hand. Oh, I see a hand is raised. Raise your physical hand or your virtual hand. Sahadev Das, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much. We've been missing you a lot on the African platform. But we hope to have you sometime next month.
Yes, Giriraja Puja Das has scheduled me for next month.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right. And thank you for being with us tonight. I have one quick question, and that is, what is the criteria of ISKCON in considering whose appearance, disappearance day we observe at first? Because Narottama Dasa Thakura, we recognize his appearance, his disappearance dates, but we do not fast. whereas personalities like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Bhaktivinoda, we observe a fast. But Gorkishore and Das Babaji, for example, we do not observe a fast. So what is the criteria? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Well, we do observe fasts for the more recent acharyas, including Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj. So yes, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and our Srila Prabhupada. But we don't observe fasts for the acharyas who are earlier in the line. Of course, we do observe fasts for the Vishnu Tattva. And that's just the tradition that has been handed down to us. But yes, the more recent ones, we do observe fast. And, the Vishnu Tattvas and Srimati Radharani, Anuradhastami do observe fast. Hare Krishna.
Priya, you have a question?
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the beautiful class. So I have two questions. One is this Ramachandra Kaviraj, who was he a disciple of?
Srinivasacharya.
Okay. And they were classmates, right? With Srinivasacharya was classmate with Narottama Dasa Thakura.
Yes, they were students of Srila Goswami.
Thank you, Maharaj. Another question is, Maharaj, when these special days come, we have such affection for personalities like Narottama Dasa Thakura. You just wonder, what can I do to make him happy today? So even with Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur Prabhupada appearance day, I felt the same mood for other days also. And even when Narottama Dasa Thakura appearance day came, I just wondered that. So what do you think we can do to make him happy?
Well, our general process is to taste Krishna consciousness and share Krishna consciousness. So if you do those two things, they will be happy. And Srila Prabhupada is, well, not just him, I mean, it goes back, They like book distribution. So if you can distribute some books, that will make them happy. But if you chant and read and take the occasions as opportunities to increase your determination to serve them and Srila Prabhupada and their mission, that will be a very good way to try to repay them. As Srila Prabhupada wrote in one letter that, one can never repay the debt to the spiritual master. But if you want to try to repay your debt to me, then you should preach vigorously like me.
Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Brajalila.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you so much for making your presence in Gita Nagari, even though it's virtual. Thank you. I was just a little curious about the Smarta Brahmanas, and just for clarification, are they considered the same as Smarta Brahmanas? Is that I know these two terminologies, and I guess I'm just wondering if that they were kind of like in the same consciousness.
Yes, yeah, these, yeah, they're not real Brahmins according to the qualities of Brahmins mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, but they claim to be Brahmins by virtue of their birth. And the Smarta Brahmins are known for being very fussy about rules and regulations. But yeah, they're just not, what can I say? They're not what they should be, let's put it that way. They're not the way they should be. Yeah. And Srila Prabhupada faced a lot of opposition from caste Brahmins because he made Westerners Brahmins. But what Srila Prabhupada did was supported by Shastra, and you know, as Prabhupada would quote, the dogs may bark, but the caravan will pass. So he didn't really stop initiating Westerners as Brahmins, because some caste Brahmins objected.
I have a question, if you don't mind. Srila Prabhupada seemed to prefer, count as his favorite, the song Hari Hari Bipale, which is composed by Narottama Dasa Thakura. Have a direct experience of Prabhupada saying that this was his favorite song. And the second part of the question is, do you have any particular affection or attraction to any of Narottama Dasa Thakura's songs that you feel I'm closer to your heart than others, perhaps?
Thank you. Srila Prabhupada told Yamuna Devi that his favorite was Hari Hari Bifale. Personally, I like Shri Guru Charana Padma because we would sing it for Srila Prabhupada. And although it's a different mood, but it's very touching, Yaya Nilo Premadana. And I like Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. In fact, if someone had asked me to name one, which you didn't, but for years I would have said Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. It's just so beautiful. Yeah. We are so indebted to Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura for these songs. Yeah, our lives are so enriched by them. Yeah. He's a great personality. Amazing.
Agari Krishna Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My name is Agari Krishna Das. I reside at Gita.
Oh, Hare Krishna Maharaj, sorry about that. So my question relates to Narottama Dasa Thakura. It appears that the way he got, or at least began to manifest his qualities as a great devotee of the Lord, was after he received the prema from Bhakti Devi as arranged by Lord Chaitanya. So one could argue that it seems like he was a Kripa Siddha as opposed to a Nitya Siddha, because the other great devotees in our Parampara line, they didn't have this arrangement where prema was actually, quote unquote, delivered as a package from Lord Chaitanya himself. So could one argue that way? And how do you actually defeat that kind of conception to establish that no, Narottama Dasa Thakura was great, even though this arrangement was made by the Lord, that he was actually a Nitya Siddha, great devotee of Lord Chaitanya?
Well, Lord Chaitanya was calling out his name, Narottam, Narottam, because he had some intrinsic qualities of a pure Vaishnava. And because of Narottam's basic qualifications, Lord Chaitanya chose him to receive that special gift of prema that Mahaprabhu kept with the river Padma. And so, yeah, I would say it was a case of Lord Chaitanya reciprocating with Narottam and giving him that prema for which he was worthy. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left the prema with the Padma River, she asked him, "How will I recognize Narottam when he comes?" And Mahaprabhu replied, "Don't worry, you will recognize him," indicating that Narottam was special even before he received that gift of prema that Mahaprabhu had left with the river for him. So, yeah. Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura ki jai. Sahadev Das, is your hand up from before?
No, I just raised my hand up, Maharaj. I was just going to ask, is it not just Vaishnava etiquette that even though one may be a Nitya Siddha, but once they come to this plane, they still seek the previous Acharya's blessings and benedictions? Because I understand Srila Prabhupada, we all know he's a Nitya Siddha, but I also understand that he actually went and lived in Srila Rupa Goswami's Samadhi and prayed so much, begging for his mercy. Is that not the case? Hare Krishna.
Yes, that is always the mood of the devotee, to pray for the help and mercy of the previous acharyas. In fact, I'll read something very nice from Srila Prabhupada about that mood. Just one moment. So this is one of my favorite quotations from Srila Prabhupada. It's from a talk he gave on the Bhagavad Gita 120 in 1973 in London. So he says, just like nowadays, every nation has different types of flags. So Arjuna also had his flag on the chariot. The flag was on the top of his chariot, and it was marked with Hanuman, Vajrangaji, who fought for Lord Ramachandra. Arjuna is fighting for Krishna, so he is following in the footsteps of Vajrangaji. Vaishnavism is like that. Mahajana yeno gata sapantha. The Vaishnav should follow the previous Mahajan, authority. That is Vaishnavism. We don't manufacture ideas. We simply accept the behavior or the activities of previous acharyas. There is no difficulty. In the fighting principle, Arjuna is fighting for Krishna, and he is following the previous fighting acharya, Hanumanji. Therefore, he has depicted his flag with Hanuman, that Hanumanji, Vajrangaji, kindly help me. This is Vaishnavism. I have come here to fight for Lord Krishna. You also fought for the Lord. Kindly help me. This is the idea, Kapidvaja. So in any activities of the Vaishnavas, they should always pray to the previous acharya. Kindly help me, kindly. Vaishnava is always thinking himself helpless and begging help from the previous acharya. Just like in Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will find the author at the end of every chapter, Shri Rupa Raghunatha Padayara Asha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Dasa. In every line, he is thinking of Rupa Raghunath, previous acharyas. Let me surrender to the Goswamis and they will help me how to write. You cannot write. That is not possible. So this is Vaishnav's policy. Vaishnava Thakura Tomara Kukura Balia Janaha More. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung, my dear Vaishnav Thakur, just accept me as your dog. As the dog works by the indication of the master, he will give his life. Dog has a good qualification. However strong a dog may be, when the master orders, he will give his life. This is dog. Faithful, so faithful to the master. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is praying, Vaishnava Thakura Tomara Kukura Balia Janaha More. My dear Vaishnav Thakur means guru, kindly accept me as your dog. And he describes, I forget the exact language, that I will always try to protect you. As a dog keeps watch, so I will watch so nobody will come to disturb you. And whatever little prasad you give me, I'll be satisfied. That is dog's qualification. The master is eating, but the dog will never come unless the master gives a little morsel. He is satisfied. So this is Vaishnavism, to follow the previous acharyas. This is Vaishnavism. So that is that is the mood of the Vaishnava. He always feels helpless and dependent on help of the previous acharyas.
Since you mentioned favorites, but I didn't ask for favorites, but now I will. You're a very thoughtful person and a very prayerful one. So what do you pray for when you go in front of your deities? What do you pray for? Who do you pray to?
It varies. I pray to Srila Prabhupada. I pray to Gaura. I pray to Radhika Raman. I pray to Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And I pray for your association.
That didn't work. So
Got it. They answered my prayer.
Our prayers were answered too.
Yeah, I pray for different things, pray for different devotees, pray to improve my chanting, because I spend a lot of time in front of them chanting japa. Yeah. Okay. There's another hand up.
Yeah, Queenie has a question for you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Oh, glory to Srila Prabhupada. I'm a resident at Gita Nagari. Thank you very much for your time, and I feel very fortunate to have a virtual darshan with you. I have a question about the so-called attachment from Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura to his dear friend Sri Ramchandra Kaviraj. How do we understand this attachment? Can you explain a little bit more about it? The reason why he also wanted to enter Samadhi when his dear friend already entered into Samadhi. Thank you very much.
Yes, this is part of a Vaishnava's life, that he becomes attached to another Vaishnava. And in the absence of the Vaishnava, he may have the sentiment, or even more, but he may have the sentiment of giving up his life. At that stage, Narottama Dasa Thakura had preached a lot, but Raghunath Das Goswami, he also expressed similar feelings of separation after Rupa Goswami left. He said that Radha Kund, which was so dear to him, was like the gaping jaws of a tiger. And that Govardhan Hill, which was also so dear to him, was like, forget exactly what he compared it to. So it's sort of like that.
Python.
Yes, I was going to say that, but I didn't have the confidence. But yes. So yes, it can happen that a Vaishnava feels like that. But still, Raghunath Das Goswami continued to live, till a ripe old age. When after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, Raghunath Das Goswami was feeling so much separation. He wanted to commit Vaishnava suicide by jumping from Govardhan Hill. But Rupa and Sanatan took him under their shelter. And they said, we will accept you like our third brother. And you had so much association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagannath Puri, which we did not have. So you please stay with us and tell us about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Puri. So, there's a section in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam which discusses the departure of the spiritual master. And the context is that a wife goes into the forest with her husband, who's a king, and the king leaves her body. And the wife feels like, entering the funeral pyre with her husband. And Srila Prabhupada explains that in previous times, the wives often would do that. They would enter the funeral pyre of their husband. And when Pandu left, he had two wives, Madri and Kunti. And but he left his children, the five Pandavas. So there was a discussion, whether both should enter the funeral pyre or only one should enter. And the conclusion was that only one should enter because the other would have to take care of the children. And so Madri entered and Kunti remained and took care of the children. And, Srila Prabhupada says that the lesson from this is because, figuratively, the king was the spiritual master and the queen was the disciple. And Srila Prabhupada says that, that this indicates that a sincere disciple of the spiritual master should rather give up his body than fail to execute the mission of the spiritual master. Or in other words, as Srila Prabhupada says, or in other words, the disciple should be prepared to execute the mission of the spiritual master without any personal considerations. So, surrender. Nice, thank you. You are Queenie, so we spoke about Queen Kunti.
Anila, go ahead and ask.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Please accept my respectful obeisances. All glories to you, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much. Sorry, the light is. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj, for always making yourself so available for each one of us. Very unfortunately, I have a little different version of the previous question. Being conditioned Kali Yuga souls, we try to develop relationship with other devotees with our conditionings, which ought to be purified in the process. So when going through the process of purification, how do we retain a spiritual consciousness and not have a sense of pain or resentment?
What was the thing about pain and resentment?
Once Mother Guru Bhakti had said that if all you are interacting with is devotees, your purification will also come from devotees.
Yeah.
So, though being theoretically aware that it's for my good and my growth, given that realistically I may not be there or I'm not there, how do I not stay in that consciousness of hurt and resentment and move on?
Well, I'll read a verse and purport, which I think will be relevant. And this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Prayers by Queen Kunti. Text 41. And this goes with the next verse also, but text 41. Ata Vishvesva Vishvat Pan Vishvamurche Sakishu Me Sneha Pasham Imam Chindi Jidam Pandu Shuvishtu. O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please therefore sever my tie of affection for my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. I'll skip to the second paragraph. A pure devotee cuts off the limited ties of affection for his family and widens his activities of devotional service for all forgotten souls. Such personalities as a Brahmin, a devotee, a king, or a public leader must be very broad-minded in discharging their respective duties. Srimati Kunti Devi was conscious of this fact, and being weak, she prayed to be free from such bondage of family affection. The Lord is addressed as the Lord of the universe, or the Lord of the universal mind, indicating his all-powerful ability to cut the hard knot of family affection. Therefore, it is sometimes experienced that the Lord, out of his special affinity toward a weak devotee, breaks the family affection by force of circumstances arranged by his all-powerful energy. By doing so, he causes the devotee to become completely dependent on him and thus clears the path for the devotees going back to Godhead. And the next verse is very significant, verse and purport. Tayi menanya vishaya matir madhu pate sakrit ratim udavatad adha gange vogam udanvati. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Perfection of pure devotional service is attained when all attention is diverted towards the transcendental loving service of the Lord. To cut off the tie of all other affections does not mean complete negation of the finer elements, like affection for someone else. This is not possible. A living being, whoever he may be, must have this feeling of affection for others, because this is a symptom of life. The symptoms of life, such as desire, anger, hankerings, feelings of attraction, etc., cannot be annihilated. Only the objective has to be changed. Desire cannot be negated, but in devotional service, the desire is changed for the service of the Lord in place of desire for sense gratification. The so-called affection for family, society, country, etc. consists of different phases of sense gratification. When the desire is changed for the satisfaction of the Lord, it is called devotional service. Kunti Devi's affection for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis is not out of the range of devotional service, because the service of the Lord and the service of the devotees are identical. Sometimes service to the devotee is more valuable than service to the Lord. But here, the affection of Kunti Devi for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis was due to family relation. The tie of affection in terms of material relation is the relation of Maya, because the relation of the body or the mind is due to the influence of the external energy. Relations of the soul, established in relation with the Supreme Soul, are factual relations. When Kunti Devi wanted to cut off the family relation, she meant to cut off the relation of the skin. The skin relation is the cause of material bondage, but the relation of the soul is the cause of freedom. The relation of the soul to the soul can be established by the medium of the relation with the super soul. So in our relationships with one another, in our relationships with one another who are devotees, we want to increase the spiritual dimension of the relationship and decrease the material aspect. So we don't have to reject the relationship, but we want to purify it. And, in familial relationships with devotees, there can definitely be both a material side and a spiritual side to it. And so we want to increase the spiritual dimension and decrease the material aspect, which is based on the body, and preserve and increase the spiritual aspect, which is based on two souls engaging in service to the Supreme Soul.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Just as a detail, that was Lalita as an initiated disciple, very nice devotee. Was a doctor as well in Ohio. Because there was no light on her face, I couldn't tell who it was, and also because the legal name was posted there. Any other questions? If not, we want to thank. Oh, there's one more. How about this? I'm gonna say what I have to say. Then we have one last question for you, Giriraja Swami Maharaj. 1 second, Vrajaleela, just give me a moment. This has been very enlightening to all of us, and very kind of you to address us on this day, on such an auspicious day as the appearance of Narottama Dasa Thakura, who it was the mercy incarnated of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We hope that this is not going to be the last time that you are with us, virtually or personally. And we want to thank you from the bottom of our heart. So after Vrajaleela makes her question, I'm going to request everybody to unmute themselves and show their affection and thank Giriraja Swami personally. But first, please, Vrajaleela.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarvatma Prabhu. I wanted to thank you for inviting Maharaj to be with us. And Maharaj, I'm respectfully asking you this question. The answer that you gave, so much I appreciate that. Spiritually, at the end of the day, everyone, all of us, must take shelter, especially of these great words of personalities like Kunti Devi. I'm just a little curious and I guess I'm a little unsettled, Maharaj, by when we experience losses, it appears that often there's a gap. And yes, I absolutely accept that in that gap, we do need to be more vigilant with our spiritual practices. However, there are emotions that are also there in that gap. And I guess I'm just a little curious. What do you do with the emotions? What does someone do with the emotions? They may know, I mean, I may know, I need to take shelter spiritually. However, I may still be haunted by those emotions of loss. What do I do with those?
You mean by feelings of separation for someone who has left?
No, feelings of separation comes in so many ways. So feelings of separation often comes from having certain, maybe expectations of devotees, and it may be that those expectations may not be reciprocated. So that could be a loss.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate to have Srila Prabhupada's personal association. And I saw how he dealt with devotees who left, or in rare cases, very rare cases, but devotees who turned against him, went away or turned against him. And, you know, he was fixed in his determination to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Guru Maharaj. But he also felt pain and loss. There was one, I mean, I forget the context in which he said that he was shedding tears for one disciple who left, but he quoted, in that context, he quoted his Guru Maharaj, who had given sannyas to a disciple, and then that disciple went back to his wife. And Srila Prabhupada said his Guru Maharaj, you know, lamented with tears in his eyes that he could not save that disciple. So what I saw in Srila Prabhupada and what I believe is our philosophy as well is that every sentiment or emotion can be there, but in relation to Krishna, with Krishna in the center. Yeah. As for what do you do with the emotions, I guess tolerate. I don't know what else to say about what to do with the emotions. Tolerate or maybe dovetail them. Like Srila Prabhupada said, if you're feeling angry, you should think of Lord Nrsingadev. So in that sense, we could maybe dovetail those emotions in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. The material world is not a happy place. But it's happy when we're engaged in devotional service.
Well, after a brief announcement from our sponsors, which is that we're going to have Mahatma Prabhu giving the Bhagavatam class on Sunday morning at 7 a.m. and Brahmatirtha Prabhu the next day on Monday, which is the appearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at 6:30 p.m. It's going to somewhat recreate his famous meetings with Srila Prabhupada in the little hut in Mayapur that was the origin of the book, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. So as you can see, we have a stellar lineup, and a main ingredient of it has been His Holiness Giriraja Swami. Now I invite all of you, all 59 of you, to unmute yourselves and thank him personally. Please.
Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. God bless
Thank
you.
you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining. If we're going to end now, which it seems like we are, I suggest we conclude with Vaishnava Pranam. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava of the Lord, for just like desired trees, fulfill the desires of everyone, are full of compassion for the fallen creatures' souls. Gaudiya Vaishnava ki jai. Narottam Das Thakura ki jai. Ram ki jai.
All glory to His grace. Giriraja Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Harvo. This is Harvo.
Hare Krishna.